All right, one last look at your traffic and weather for your ride in on this Wednesday morning. Several accidents to report, one at Atlas and Garner's Ferry, one at Cox Ferry and Nazareth, another one at Columbiana and Harbison, and then one at I-20 westbound and Highway 6. Today, guess what? It's going to be hot again. A high of 100 with heat index of over 100 with chance of severe thunderstorms later on this afternoon. Tomorrow, high of 95 with some afternoon storms. Then Friday, sunny with a high of 94. That's your traffic and weather from Wetzel's Automotive Traffic Center here on The Game. Nine o'clock on your Wednesday morning. Welcome in. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head, and yes, as the intro said, Jack Veltri has made his triumphant return. Feels like it's been forever, man. Week and a half or almost 2 weeks now, I guess.
Dude, it's been since the last time I was here was last Monday. So we're talking about 9 days ago.
Yeah.
So yes, guys,
feels like forever.
Guys, I did not die. I'm here. Even if some of you guys maybe don't want me here or whatever, and I'm just joking. I'm so happy to be back, man. It literally has felt like ages since I've been back here.
I did make it a point just about every single day to remind people Jack is in Arizona right now. Yes. He will be back.
He's alive.
Coming up Wednesday. He's okay. Because that's the thing in the radio world is when you stop hearing somebody's voice and people don't acknowledge it, you're like, oh, I know what happened there. But no, Jack was just hanging out in Arizona. By the way, how was Arizona?
Oh man, it was great. It was seriously unbelievable. If you guys have never been out to Arizona before, highly recommend it. Especially if you're I was just talking about it with Bill and Preston before they left. I mean, they were talking about if they were my age, they could probably do the hiking. But
sure.
You got if you're in your 20s or even your 30s. Definitely get out and do hiking in Arizona if you enjoy that sort of thing. Like going to the Grand Canyon, absolutely awesome experience. I mean, our trip started out in Phoenix, which really hot. I mean, I was telling you before, got up to maybe like 110 degrees. But the difference is, man, no humidity. Dry heat, total. It's something you can handle, but it's still very hot. But man, just hiking and seeing some of these views and stuff. I mean, it's stuff that pictures, when I show my family and stuff and friends, it's like it just doesn't even do it justice. It's like you have to see it with your own eyes to just take it all in. It's like, man, this is here in the United States. Like, this is on Earth. Like, this is insanely cool.
What's the highest point of elevation that you got to?
I think we got up to, I don't know the exact elevation, but I think we got over 7,000 elevation. Mm-hmm. I mean, it was typically around that 4,000 to 7,000 range.
Yeah. Just
because of the peak in the mountains and stuff.
Sure.
But yeah, it would at times it would be like really hard to breathe or whatever.
Do you feel that difference when you're above a mile?
I was telling Caroline when we were driving to, I think this was our first day of hiking last Friday, and we were just driving to Horseshoe Bend out in Page, Arizona, and the elevation there was getting up pretty high, and I'm like, man, it's getting hard to breathe out here. I don't know what it is, but and Caroline was like, it's fine out here. I mean, it's not too hard to breathe, and she thought something was wrong with me, which probably was. I mean, I don't know, but there's definitely something to be said about being in the higher elevation because I know Colorado's like that too.
Sure. Well, you came back just in time for it to be 100 degrees here.
Dude, I'll tell you what, and I was telling you this before. I got back on Monday. It landed in Charlotte. It's about like 7:30 at night, and it's still sunny out, and it's like 93 degrees. As soon as I went outside, it was blistering.
It just hits you right in the face.
It hits you different. Like even now, waking up this morning to drive back to Columbia, I mean, it was probably low 80s, 7 in the morning, and it's still so hot out. And again, humidity makes such a big difference. So, when people do talk about how brutal summers in Columbia are, they're awful. But then again, being in 110 degrees, I'd rather take that.
Sure.
I think with the no humidity compared to this.
Well, you missed quite a few things while you were out. We'll get your thoughts and recap what's happened in the past couple days in just a moment. But it is 9 o'clock. We got to kick things off with our Sandstorm Pick Me Up.
Time to get hyped.
Here's your 9 a.m. Sandstorm.
Sponsored by George Sink Injury Lawyers. Just call all nines.
It is time for your 9 a.m. Sandstorm Pick Me Up, brought to you by South Carolina's largest injury law firm, George Sink Injury Lawyers. If you've been hurt in the car or work, call George Sink now at 803 all nines. Of course, we were following the College World Series and the NCAA baseball tournament very closely, and we got a lot of run out of this on Monday, but a controversial second game that LSU wins their 8th national championship, but that was not the story. It was Kevin Schnall and his assistant coach getting run 28 pitches into the game.
Yeah, and I was so annoyed that I was not here to talk about this and I'm glad I'm back a few days after, so it's not like, oh, I'm back like next week and it's like, oh man, like
Sure.
the College World Series is well over by now, so it's still fresh in our minds what happened, and it's honestly ridiculous that Kevin Schnall got run and his assistant coach get tossed in the first inning. Now, I understand arguing balls and strikes, you're kind of asking for yourself to get tossed at that point. If it were a regular season game, I understand. Like managers and head coaches, you've seen it plenty of times before. They've gotten tossed very early in games. It just happens, right? And some umpires, I guess, I don't know if like they don't have a feel for it or whatever, but you got to understand in that moment, Game 2 of a College World Series final. This is the championship round. I think you got to give a little bit more leeway here and a little bit more run. Now, if there was something where Schnall just kind of kept barking at him or whatever, then yeah, I get it. But like, I think it was kind of just overblown by the umpire Campos here, and with Schnall running out into the field and the one of the other umpires falling to the ground, I thought that was kind of comical, to be honest. A little bit of a flop. And
did you hear Schnall's quote after the game about it?
I briefly did see it while I was out. What was it again?
So, because he said, like, I never touched the guy. He basically tripped on Campos's foot.
Oh, yeah.
And stumbled backwards. He said, I shouldn't be responsible for somebody else's lack of I shouldn't be punished for somebody else's lack of athleticism, basically.
Oh, yeah, totally.
Because, again, like, that was the biggest flop I've ever seen.
Yeah.
It was ridiculous.
And what, he got a 2-game suspension because of it? Like,
he didn't do.
He wouldn't have been able to manage Game 3, which I think would be, honestly, insane to really think about.
And now, as it stands, he's currently suspended for the first game next year.
Yeah, well, that's not ideal, but and again, it just does take away from what was. I don't want to say it was the best College World Series ever, because I don't think it really was, but it takes away from LSU, right? Like, it takes away from the moment of what LSU did. I mean, you're coming off Game 1 where Cade Anderson, who is unbelievable, and he's going to be the first pitcher, I think, off the board in the MLB draft. I think he honestly should be the top pick if it's not some high schooler. But I mean, 130 pitch complete game on Saturday, and then you go to Sunday. I mean, that game with Schnall getting ejected so early on, it dominated the headline of that game, which is LSU winning the national championship. And I mean, LSU, we saw them firsthand this year here at South Carolina. They're a great team, and the run they've gone on now of winning 2 of the last 3 national championships, I mean, I think they got a little bit of that dynasty going again. Now this is their 8th title, and
Sure.
Jay Johnson is not going anywhere. And
Won 2 in 4 years.
Is it not 2 of the last 3? They won in 23.
They won in 2 and 4 years, like total, because he started in 22 at LSU.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah,
I see.
So he's winning
the
a national championship at a 50% clip right now at LSU, which is pretty darn good.
Yeah, and LSU, that place, they can bring in players. So I doubt this is going to be the last time we see.
They're not going anywhere anytime soon.
No, but again, it sucks that Schnall got canned so early on in the game that it had to really take over what should have been the main story, which is LSU winning another national championship. But it is what it is. And look, Coastal had a great run getting here. It just, it's tough running into a team like LSU. And now that's, 6 straight years with the SEC winning a national championship. So I think we can say from the SEC standpoint, this tournament was a success.
It ended up being a success. It was a little shaky there in the beginning with having half the national seeds and only 2 teams making it to the College World Series. But at the end of the day, they made it out and won at the end of the day. By the way, the Arkansas curse continues. You weren't here for that last week either.
Oh, my gosh. Okay, that was something I did want to touch on. Man, I feel I was not watching it live because again, the time difference, too, is such another thing that...
Yeah, they're on Mountain Time, right? 2 hours?
No, they're 3 hours behind, which is also weird.
I think it alternates, right? They go between Mountain and West Coast?
Yeah, so because the higher you go up in Arizona, like there were certain spots where it got to 2 hours behind, and then it would randomly flip to 9 o'clock, like 3 hours behind. It was the strangest thing out there. But
Sure.
Anyway, the time difference made it a little bit weird with watching games and stuff. But seeing the rerun of Arkansas in that game against LSU, man, Alloy is such a good player that like he should have gone for the double play there. I get you want to get the lead runner out, but what does that do in that situation, right? And we've seen him turn some double plays that are very similar, in different games, even in Omaha. So it's like I think you probably should have gone to second there. And if you don't get, I think it was Stephen Milam up at bat for LSU. He's not the quickest guy, but even if he beats it out, you have runners on the corners, 2 outs. You feel pretty good about your chances rather than having 2 guys. I mean, I think you still had 2 guys on with 2 outs. I mean, it was just like I don't know, man.
And then the left fielder misses the one. It's like, all right, this is over.
And he's such a good player. I remember watching him. In that series when I went to Arkansas when South Carolina played, I mean, like it's just tough. I mean, Arkansas is such a good team, and I really did think this was the year for them just because they have that offense that can finally go along with that really good pitching staff. And
Yep.
I mean, hey, Gage Wood, he was phenomenal too. I didn't even get to talk about that when I was out of town. I mean, just
and they were the favorites going into the World Series to win it all. And they got LSU the first time around, but again, when you're leading by 2 runs in the 9th inning, you feel like that's a safe-ish type of lead, but wheels come off, and again, a very tortured fan base when it comes to their history in Omaha is Arkansas.
Yeah, I'm sure that one gave them PTSD. So, yeah, that was crazy. And then, the finals, man.
Finals, yeah.
Finals, the NBA finals.
So when you were last here, we were going to, at that point, Game 6.
Is that right? Yeah.
Yeah. Because the Game 5 had happened.
Yeah.
Or was Game 5 that Monday night? I can't remember.
I remember watching Game 6 out in Arizona.
Yeah. So I thought, like, okay, this is where OKC, because, again, Indiana had the opportunity to go up 3-1. They blew that opportunity. Series gets tied. OKC gets the next win, goes up 3-2. And I thought, oh, sure, they're going to put the nail in the coffin in Game 6. And then Indiana plays an amazing Game 6. And it's like, oh, okay. And then this is going to be the question come away from it. If Tyrese Halliburton doesn't get hurt, what happens on Sunday night?
Yeah, that's something that definitely is going to be talked about for a long time here. And he got us to such a great start in Game 7.
Fire.
And again, he had the calf strain after Game 6, so it's kind of like, he was already banged up. But at that point, you're playing through it, right? And
this isn't a Tuesday game in January.
Yeah, the Achilles thing is just it's a tough thing that had to happen, or that happened in this game. And I mean, he had already 3 threes made by that point, so who knows how that would have gone. My counter to that is Indiana, while they're led by Halliburton, they're so much deeper than just him. They have so many other scorers on this team, like Pascal Siakam. You have Aaron Nesmith. You have Miles Turner, obviously. Nembhard. Like, you have a very good team here that you didn't get here. Like, Halliburton helped you a lot get here, but you have so many other players on this team that's like, you could probably get through it. And it was a close game for a bit.
Yeah, they'd lead at halftime.
Yeah, but once the second half got going and you get deeper into the game, OKC, that defense, it's so good.
Yeah, that's the thing to me is like he's an important piece, and you saw as the second half went along and that defense started to really grind on him, like, hey, if you have that extra piece out there helping out, especially being the catalyst for so many comebacks in this crazy playoff run, who knows what happens, but that's going to obviously bother Pacers fans, for a while until they get back and win one themselves. And OKC, at this iteration of the team, not the Seattle Supersonics, has won their first title instead.
Yeah, their first title in OKC. And it does bring up an interesting thing, man. Is SGA the best Thunder player of all time? Like, I saw it the other day, and I'm like, he won the Finals MVP, won the Western Conference Finals MVP, he won the regular season MVP. you stack it up against KD and Russ, who both won MVPs with OKC,
Sure.
but they never won a finals together. I mean, think about Harden, Russ, and KD in 2012. They got to the finals. I know they ran to LeBron, but those three versus this Thunder team.
Yeah,
I don't know.
It's a debate worth having.
It
I'll say
really
that much.
is.
And I'm sure that's the conversation on Oklahoma City radio right now.
Oh yeah,
It's like, where does this stack up to the other greats that have played? And again, he's got a long career ahead of him, so who knows what he's going to accomplish before it's all said and done.
I mean, I think this is probably the greatest season for a Thunder player with SGA, but obviously when you stack it up against what KD and Russ averaging a triple-double in his MVP season, that's hard to beat. But the Thunder, what a season they had.
Well, it's been an exciting couple days since Jack's been out. Now that all college sports have come to an end for the 24-25 calendar season, we'll grade how the SEC did in all the major ones. That's coming up next. It is The Extra Point. It's our head and Jack Feltry along with you on your Wednesday on The Game. Tyred here once again for our friends over at Canty Foundation Specialist. I remind you all the time, but I remind you once again, you need to be on the lookout for things around your home that are a little bit peculiar because they could be signs of serious foundation problems. Those things include things like cracks in your exterior brick, cracks in walls or above windows and door frames, doors or windows that might be sticking, uneven or bouncy floors, or cracks over your garage door. If you have any of these issues with your home, you need to get them addressed immediately. That's where our friends at Canty Foundation Specialist come in. Go online to schedule an appointment today at cantycanfix.com. They will send a professional out to your home to evaluate your foundation issues and get them fixed so you and your family can live without any worry going forward. Again, go online to schedule an appointment today at cantycanfix.com for our friends over at Canty Foundation Specialist. Welcome back in, Extra Point. It's Hourhead and Jack Beltry along with you on your Wednesday here on The Game. Now that we've had hockey, basketball, and all college sports coming to an end, we've officially hit the dog days of summer. You got Major League Baseball, you got WNBA, and that's kind of it. And Wimbledon's coming up, but that's kind of it for professional sports, at least
golf.
until golf. Yeah, that's one that
Still have another
happening.
major to come.
Still another major.
Yeah.
But for the most part, everything crawling a little bit now until we kick into football coming up here, and only 67 days for South Carolina, so it's getting closer.
Yeah, I mean it's now getting really close. Like once we get towards like that 50 range, we're going to be able to feel it a little bit.
And I love now, like typically SEC Media Days is kind of that like point where like, okay, now we're rolling. We got a lot of things to talk about heading into the season. Now we have the college football video game being released. We'll get into that a little bit later on, but that's also kind of like really the turning point of the summer, I feel like now, because it comes out a couple days before Media Days.
It's like 2 weeks away.
Yeah, it's 2 weeks away, and saying, okay, now we've got a game. We can talk about that, playing that, and now we're full go heading into the football season.
Now, let me ask you this two-part question.
Yep.
Are you getting the game day one? And second part, are you a hard disk or are you a digital guy?
I probably won't get it day one this year. I still have a national championship to play for CFP 25. I'm in my third year of a dynasty, which the game from one year to the next was so drastically different than what the prior editions were. I had to learn how to play defense. My first season playing dynasty, I was awful on defense. I couldn't stop anybody to save my life. I was giving up 50 points a game. I was scoring like 50 myself. And it was some wild games that I was playing, but I'm like, okay, I got to lock in on defense here. Figured that out, gotten better, and I think in my second season I made it to the semis and got bounced. I've now made it to the national championship. So I've been holding that game to play for when I come back to it after I stopped playing, back at about the end of January. So I'm going to play that, maybe play another season, and then I may get 26 a little bit later on this year, but because I put so much into Dynasty and I built a team, a roster, I'm like, I don't want to just like throw this to the side.
Yeah, and we'll get into the game, but hopefully it's going to be even better than 25 was a nice step in the right direction, but
25 brought it back, and I thought overall it was a very solid game. Were there elements missing? Yes, which it seems like they've addressed in a lot of ways. Really built into the game day experience a lot more. Going to get 2001, going to get Enter Sandman, all those kind of things. So I think this is a more fleshed out version of the game, which is the exciting part.
It definitely is. So, I mean, hey, this is what we get to talk about here during the the summer days. So
now that all college sports have wrapped up with LSU winning the baseball national championship, I want to kind of focus on the major sports here, particularly when it comes to the SEC, because in most, if not all sports, the SEC is looked at as one of the, if not the best conferences for that respective sport. So with that in mind, let's kind of grade the SEC on how they did when it came to most of the major sports this year. We'll start off with baseball. Again, you end up with yet another national champion. Didn't get as many teams in Omaha as you thought you would, but still had about half the field when it came to the top national seeds going into the tournament. How are you grading SEC baseball this year?
So we're going on the A to F scale?
A to F scale, there is a plus minus as well. So you can go A minus, B plus, those kind of things.
I'm going to go A minus for baseball for the SEC.
Okay.
It makes it a lot easier because LSU won the national championship. And if it had been Coastal, this might be a B, just because there were so many higher seeded teams in the postseason for the SEC that just didn't make it to Omaha. And again, it's very tough to get to the College World Series and stuff, but when your number is getting slashed tremendously going into super regionals, and then you only have 4 teams left, and then one of them's getting bounced because Arkansas and Tennessee faced each other in the super, and it's like you only have 2 teams going to Omaha. It's a little disappointing. So great season overall for the SEC. LSU winning the national championship helps with that, but definitely going A minus here.
Yeah, I'll agree with that. Again, you in years past have commanded half the field in Omaha, and when you have that many top national seeds, you expect it to be around that case, and that didn't end up happening. A lot of upsets. Obviously, Vandy, the number 1 overall seed, doesn't even make it out of their own regional. So not the best year, but does end with the national championship for SEC baseball. Softball, another national championship, this time with Texas taking on former Big 12 rival in Texas Tech. Oklahoma's run of at least national championships comes to an end. They're obviously always going to be a force. South Carolina, part of the mix for what was a very special season for Coach Chastain Woodard in year number 1. SEC softball's grade is?
I'm going to go A. I think A feels right because, Texas, again, if the SEC is winning the national championship, regardless of which team it is, and that includes Texas and Oklahoma now. I know it's the first year for those teams in the SEC, but if you're winning the national championship as an SEC conference here, then I think you probably deserve the benefit of the doubt when it comes to the grades. And honestly, the SEC in softball is such an underrated conference when you look at the conference as a whole, especially in softball. It's just such a good league up and down. And you look at South Carolina as a perfect example of that. Picked to finish last, and they end up getting within one win of going to OKC. So the SEC had a great year. I know Oklahoma didn't win the national championship, but Texas has been here a few times now, and they finally got over the hump.
I'm actually going to give them an A+ because Oklahoma didn't win the national championship. The fact that they came into the league the first year and just didn't go immediately back to the top and win the entire thing. And I know Texas was there the year prior in playing them for it, but the fact that they came in and weren't able to win it and Texas was, I do think speaks volumes to how tough this league is. And again, the league has always been good. South Carolina obviously came on, was really, really strong this year, but I would give the league an A+ currently overall.
No, I definitely agree with you in that regard. I mean, it's just, how can you not at least go A with this?
Men's basketball, again, they had not had an SEC team play for the national championship in a decade. They had 2 teams make the Final Four before Florida ends up winning the entire thing.
I think you go A+ here. I think the SEC had such a great season, historically speaking, one of the best of all time. And for Florida to win the national championship, again, that really does help when you look at the grades here. But on the whole, the conference was really, really good this year. And say what you will about some of the teams that did get into the tournament. Like, you look at Texas getting into the field and stuff and them getting bounced immediately and that leading to their coach getting fired and stuff. Like, that's one example. And South Carolina having a really bad year and some of these other teams in there, like LSU didn't have a good year. But also, you got so many teams into the tournament. You set a record in that regard of getting teams into March Madness, and you end up with 2 teams in the Final Four. That's pretty good in my opinion.
Moving on to women's basketball, South Carolina comes up short to UConn in the national championship, but you did have 2 teams in the Final Four in Carolina and Texas playing each other for a 10,000th time during the season. Great for women's basketball.
What are you thinking on this one? I'm not sure because again, this is one where the SEC didn't win the title.
B+?
I think that's fair. That's fair.
Because, again, the standard is so high.
Oh, yeah.
Carolina has a lot to do with that. When you come up short, it's a disappointment.
Let's go B+. I think B+ feels about right for this. And, again, Texas is extremely good this year. LSU, obviously. But, again, it's so tough to win a national championship. And UConn, very good this year.
Last one, college football, 12-team playoff. No SEC team for the second straight year playing in the national championship. Texas was one fumble away from maybe getting there, but once again, the SEC is without a national championship for the second year in a row.
This one's tough. I'm not going A. I think honestly, like a solid B. I feel like maybe a good year, but not a great year.
I'll go B-.
Yeah.
Because again, you had a team in the semifinals in Texas, but you're the standard. You are supposed to win the national championship more often than not. And the fact that the past 2 years, the Big Ten has gotten better. You're not getting the Big Ten's right there with the SEC, but the fact you haven't even had the opportunity to play for it the past 2 years is below the standard of what's expected. Maybe even C+, if we're being honest.
And honestly,
it's that high.
And you have to also consider, I know bowl games are kind of controversial in that not everyone guys opt out and stuff. So it's not the full roster of what you would normally have in a regular season game. But to go 8-7 in bowl games, that's actually kind of good for the SEC.
But some of the higher ends, like South Carolina and Alabama, lost their bowl games.
A lot of teams lost. So it's like that has to be considered. I mean, if this were just regular season, maybe we're talking about something else. But I think the SEC, you probably got to go about that B to B- range.
Well, speaking of bowl games, Athlon Sports has put out their bowl projections. Where does South Carolina end up, and what could that mean for their season coming up? We'll dive into that coming up next. It is The Extra Point. Tyrod and Jack Beltry along with you on your Wednesday on The Game. Tyler Head for our friends here over at Twin Peaks, right down the street from us here in the Vista. Tonight is the NBA draft, and we are expecting to hear a particular Gamecock get his name called in that first round. There's no better place to watch and celebrate with your fellow South Carolina fans than with Twin Peaks right down the street from us here in Columbia. Watch the draft tonight over at Twin Peaks. See who's going to go first overall and come into Lodge and indulge on 29-degree draft beers where you find out why the future stars of the NBA are going to land. Then just a couple days from now, coming up on Friday, you have the NHL draft where you can also see where the future stars of hockey are going to end up to play their careers. You can order a sear-to-order burger and kick back and watch each team add new game changers to their roster. This and so much more. TV as far as the eye can see, tons and tons of delicious food, and, of course, those 29-degree draft beers as well, all the time with our friends at Twin Peaks down in the Vista. Welcome back in, Extra Point. Tyler Ed and Jack Beltry with you on your Wednesday here on the game. Tomorrow afternoon, myself, Terry Ford, going to be doing the halftime show from the Nest at 1331 Gadsden Street right here in Columbia. You can come by, hang out with us, and also Enter for your chance to win some Gamecock football tickets for the upcoming season that is only 67 days away. And as we get closer to the start of the season, it's time for projections. Win totals, Heisman finalist, bowl projections. Well, I don't know about you, I love bowl projections. I check bowl projections religiously throughout the season. Like, even after week one, I'm like, okay, who's going to go to this bowl? I like to see it progress over the year, and especially following a team like South Carolina where, let's face it, their window for what bowl they could go to varies differently year to year, and especially in season. It's like, okay, well, it looks like we're headed for the Birmingham Bowl. Oh, wait, you're going to the Citrus Bowl. Like, it just fluctuates so much.
That's the thing about checking it so early on, and even right now. Again, we don't know what these teams – we have a good idea of maybe what these teams will look like, but we really don't know until the season gets going, because there's always going to be those teams that end up surprising you when they go on a great run, and they're like, oh, well, they probably weren't picked for a bowl game this year, but here they are. They're going to a higher-tier bowl game, and in the SEC's case, and definitely South Carolina, the expectation is they should be in a bowl game for sure this year. Getting the 6 wins feels very reasonable. But anything beyond that, it's kind of like you really could go a lot of different ways with how the season might go for South Carolina.
So according to Athlon Sports, they have South Carolina playing the ReliaQuest Bowl, taking on the Iowa Hawkeyes. Of course, this is the former Outback Bowl, which was always kind of seen in terms of the, what were then known as BCS and eventually New Year's Six Bowls, was kind of like in that second tier. Like, okay, Citrus Bowl was always viewed as like the best non-major bowl game for an SEC team. Like, Outback was always kind of right underneath that. Carolina does have a history in the Outback Bowl. Of course, the Clowney hit happened in the Outback Bowl and all that kind of thing. I don't know about you. Has this bowl game lost some luster because ReliaQuest is now the sponsor? Like, I feel like Outback was a lot more widely accepted and cooler. Like, ReliaQuest, people are like, what is that? I don't know what that is.
That's the thing. Yeah, Outback is definitely the cooler sponsor for this game, and it's been a few years since the Outback Bowl was the name of this game, and the fact that it's the ReliaQuest Bowl, it kind of has lost its luster a little bit. But then again, it's still the hardcore college football fans still know, regardless of what this bowl game is named. It's still that second tier, that B tier bowl game. When you compare it to, obviously, the bowl games and the playoff and stuff are going to get the higher echelon of the rankings here. But yes, I would probably say this is probably right up there.
So when you look at the recent history when it comes to SEC teams in the ReliaQuest Bowl, they're usually around 8 to 9 wins in the regular season. But, of course, that would mean South Carolina is not in the college football playoff. So let's kind of go on the lower end here. Let's say they go 8-4 in the regular season and miss the college football playoff. Is that acceptable off the heels of what last year was?
Considering what you lost and what you have to replace, yeah, I think that is totally acceptable. I think going 8-4 is fine. In some ways, you could definitely view it as a step back, like, for sure. But at the same time, we have to be realistic with where this program is at. I think they're very much capable of being in the playoff conversation and actually getting to the playoff if things work out in their favor this year. But it wouldn't shock me at all if they go 8-4. I mean, that's just kind of how this season could be, especially with some of the tough road games you have this year.
I feel like since the transfer portal has become a thing, we don't talk about rebuilding years quite as much in college football, because it used to be, especially if you had a team that like won the national championship and they lost a ton of those guys to either graduation or the NFL draft. You say, okay, well, that team's probably going to take a step back the next upcoming year as they kind of rebuild their talent, and we expect them to kind of get back to that level again in the next couple of years. That kind of goes out the window a lot now, I think, with the transfer portal. But like you said, with the amount of talent that South Carolina lost and the amount of unknowns that you have, you got some young guys like Mazeo Bennett. We'll see what Nick Carver can be in year number 3. Some promising young guys on defense like J.R. Johnson. Obviously, Dylan Stewart going to year number 2. Sellers on the offensive side. At quarterback, there's a lot of guys that you can point to and say, hey, I think this guy can have a good season. It's the team as a whole that begs a lot of questions. If you told me right now, like sitting here on June the 25th, Carolina was going to win 8 games, I'd take it.
Yeah.
Because, again, that's a hard thing to accomplish, especially in today's SEC. And knowing nothing else about this team, if you said, hey, I'll give you 8 wins right now, I'd take that.
Again, and if that is the floor of where we're seeing this team potentially this year, I think you take that, because, again, we don't know how it's going to go. And again, they may end up winning 10 games. Who knows? I mean, I really do think it's gonna. There's gonna be so many games this season, especially during that middle month of the year in October, where you're just like, all right, they go to LSU, they play Alabama at home, they play Oklahoma at home. Can they go 2-1 in that month, and then can they potentially split the 2-game road trip with the bye week included of Ole Miss and A&M? And maybe we are talking about a 10-win season and potentially beating Clemson, but it's going to be tough to get to that point just because there are so many games that you could easily see going another way on the schedule.
And I think in terms of overall perception of this program, because let's kind of look at Beamer's first 4 years. You overachieved in year one by actually winning 6 games and winning a bowl game. You shocked the world at the end of year 2 with the 2 big upsets against Tennessee and Clemson in consecutive weeks. You took a step back in year number 3. You jump right back up to being on the fringe of the playoff in year number 4. I think being able to follow up one of the better seasons in recent memory with this program with a very solid year, if not a great year, I think will kind of, to a lot of people, confirm like, okay, this is a program that's probably going to be pretty good on a year in, year out basis, not one that just fluctuates, goes from 9 wins to 5 wins to 9 wins to 4 wins. Like, you can kind of say, okay, I could see Carolina being consistent now. That's
the one thing that I think still remains to be seen is that consistency. It's that word that, like, South Carolina has had some really good years in football, but they've also had some disappointing years. Like, you go back to 2 years ago, they won 5 games, and that was coming off the heels of an 8-5 year where you lose in the Gator Bowl to Notre Dame, and you're like, all right,
a fourth of your roster.
Yes, and you're coming. And again, let's take the bowl game out for a second. You had those 2 great wins over Clemson and Tennessee to kind of propel you to that point where you're like, all right, they have Spencer Rattler coming back. They have some other guys come back. You had Juice Wells come back. Obviously, he didn't play much, but you had a lot of guys coming back is the point. Now, this upcoming year, you lose a lot of guys. And if they are able to get to that 8-win mark, I think that just shows, number one, that, like, hey, it doesn't matter who you have. These coaches can develop these players and make it work with what they have. And also, if you have a quarterback like Lenore Sellers, you will always have a chance to win.
Yeah, so again, if you told me right now you can give me 8 wins and a trip to the RideQuest Bowl, for people to say, oh, we need to be in the playoff this year, I think you would take that because that is a very solid year for a team that has as many question marks as this one does.
You're always going to have people that are disappointed in the fact that if South Carolina did win 8 wins, many people would view that as a failure. But when you're talking about South Carolina and, again, how difficult it is to win in college football, I think you take it right now and maybe you build it as a stepping stone from there, but we'll see.
Yeah, again, 67 days away from kickoff. Only what? I'm trying to do the math in my head here. We are 13, 14 days away from college football 26 getting released.
Yeah, we're getting close.
And as we build up to the game, we're going to get player ratings. We're going to get a lot of more intricate details on this game. And yesterday, the toughest places to play list was released. Where does South Carolina stack up compared to last year? We'll tell you about that coming up next to wrap up hour number 1 of the Extra Point. Tyler Head and Jack Beltry on your Wednesday on the game. Welcome back in. Extra Point. Tyler Head and Jack Felcher wrapping up hour number 1 on your Wednesday here on The Game. We've talked about it a lot this hour. College Football 26, only a couple weeks away from its release date. Yesterday, we get the top 25 list of toughest places to play in this year's edition of The Game. South Carolina coming in at number 16 between Camp Randall for Wisconsin and Jordan-Hare for Auburn. You're going to talk about tough places to play. That's some pretty darn good company to be kind of sandwiched in between, I would have to say.
I would say so. I think it's so tough to rank the toughest places to play. We know some of them for sure. Like LSU is, I mean, no surprise they're number 1 on this list.
They should have been number 1 last year. Like
exactly.
Well, let's be honest here. When everybody saw that, I think there were 3 last year. We're like, really?
Yeah.
Death Valley's number 3, and Kyle Field is number 1.
And Kyle Field is number 11 this year, and I thought
that's rightfully adjusted.
Yes, rightfully adjusted. Now, Willie B being number 16. Again, I think they should obviously. I think South Carolina should obviously be on this list regardless. But 16. I mean, look, we might be a little biased here because we've seen the atmosphere more times than not. But
sure.
Like it's hard not to say it's a top 10 atmosphere in college football. I think it definitely stacks up against the best of the best.
And you've visited a lot more of these conference, venues than I have, and everybody has their own traditions. Everybody has their own thing, and you ask any fan base, they're going to say, "Oh, we got the best of the best." But trying to take off my bias hat here and look at this from an objective standpoint, I do think what Carolina offers at Williams-Brice Stadium is something that is maybe more unique than a lot of places that can, as we've seen, when it's at its best, full throat on a Saturday night. I don't know how anybody comes in here and beats them.
You can say the same thing about a lot of other venues as well, like LSU at night. Nobody's going in there and winning typically. You have a lot of other, like Beaver Stadium, like Ohio Stadium, like Sanford Stadium. I could see a lot of these stadiums being higher than South Carolina. But at the same time, like I look at Alabama, I look at Clemson, I look at Oklahoma being number 8 on this list. I remember going to OU last year, and again, that was during the day, and that was during a bad season.
They were already pretty bad at that point.
Yeah, that was a bad Oklahoma team, but like still, even at South Carolina during day games at noon and stuff. I mean, we saw it against LSU last year.
Sure.
An insane environment, and not everyone has that during the day games. Everyone can have the most insane electric atmospheres at night. That's not a problem. South Carolina obviously has one of the best when you look at it from that standpoint. But even in the heat of a noon game or a 4 p.m. game, it's still insane and very electric. So I understand some of these spots with where teams and their stadiums are ranked. Like, I'm not disputing the top 4 here for sure, but I do feel like Willie B, they do have an argument to be made that it should be a little bit higher.
I think there's, a line between rowdiness and traditions that I think can kind of twist people sideways when it comes to a list like this. And last year, of course, A&M got the number 1 spot in the initial, and they adjusted as the season went along, but the initial release last June had A&M in the number 1 spot, and we're like, really? Like, yeah, A&M has the 12th man. They have the cadets or the yell leaders, whatever you want to call them, and, the cannons and all those kind of traditions. But when I think of, like, the most raucous environments that, like, make your TV shake when you're watching a game on TV, I don't think of Kyle Field necessarily. Good, but not like the elite level like an LSU and like a Death Valley.
The quantity of how much attendance you have, like the 100,000s, and Kyle Field has one of the higher attendances in the sport, that doesn't necessarily mean best environment, craziest atmosphere.
Yes,
so,
numbers aren't the end-all be-all here.
No, because Willie B only holds like, what, 79,000 now? So
something
it's
like that.
Yeah, I mean, it used to be a little bit higher, but,
That's going to go down with the renovations.
Exactly. So the bigger numbers with attendance and stuff and how many people you can hold in a venue doesn't necessarily mean you have the best environment. And a lot of these teams on the list, I mean, again, I think Florida number 7 feels right. How do we feel about Clemson at 6?
And again, you can speak on this better than I have. I've never been up to Memorial Stadium, and I feel like it kicks into another gear at night, like a noon game. And again, Carolina's got the better of them in the 2 noon games they played the past couple of years. But when you go up there at night, that's a daunting task.
It's a good environment even at noon. Like last year when South Carolina was there, really nice environment and stuff, rowdy fan base. But at night, we've seen it on TV and stuff. I've never covered a
There's some crazy stuff up there.
Oh yeah, again, everyone can have a great night atmosphere, but what you do during the day games, that really matters. And again, Clemson, they have a good atmosphere today, but again, I just do feel like South Carolina being at 16. That just says a lot about how many good venues there are, though.
That is, again, there's 130 plus in college football. It's very hard to rank them because guess what? You're not going to satisfy everyone. You're going to upset somebody with every single list that you put out. Jack, it's good to have you back, and do this again tomorrow.
Yeah, we'll do it again.
Coming up, hour number 2, Sam Shapiro jumps to me. We'll talk in some NBA draft. Colin Bull is expecting to get his name called coming up tonight. We'll discuss that next here on The Game. Welcome back in, Extra Point. Tyler Head, Sam Shapiro hopping here with me for the next hour on your Wednesday. Was it last Monday you were last in here? It's flip-flopped a little bit the past couple weeks. I can't remember.
I think I was here last month. Yeah, I was here last Monday.
A lot's happened since then. We crowned NBA champion on Sunday night. Oklahoma City Thunder getting it done against the Indiana Pacers. Your thoughts on how the finals concluded?
I was watching the beginning of the game, and I just remember thinking, after Halliburton hit that second three, I was like, this is going to come down to the final possession. And then when I saw him, he fell.
Sure.
And then when he was bawling his eyes out on the floor, I went, he's
probably not coming back.
Well, no, they showed the shot of his leg like popping, and it was just Kevin Durant 2018 all over. Or was it 2018 or 2019?
I don't even remember.
Whenever Kevin Durant tore his Achilles against Toronto, it was kind of just deja vu with that, and I was just hoping it wasn't that, but it looked exactly the same. And yeah, I'm hoping he has a speedy recovery, but I'm excited the Thunder won just because they were the talented team all year, and
sure.
It's a bunch of young guys, and I feel like usually people have to kind of ride the coattails a little bit more, go a couple times just to kind of eventually get that champion, get crowned a champion. But
have you seen all the stuff about the Thunder's hesitancy to drink in the locker room after the game?
Oh my God, yeah. Apparently all of them hate Michelob Ultra.
Well, Chad Holmgren couldn't even pronounce it. He said like Michelob or something like that. They didn't know how to pop the champagne bottles. Because and I'm assuming Michelob Ultra like sponsors the celebration.
Pretty sure they're the beer of the NBA.
Yeah, there you go. So they had all these coolers of it that was just left there. Like the other Jalen Williams had his first drink in the locker room, didn't like it. J-Dub also drank for the first time, didn't seem to like it either. Like it's so. And Preston and I talked about this yesterday on the early game that like that generation. What year were you born?
I was born 99.
Okay, so you fall under Gen Z then.
So by a couple months.
Like your generation is one, I say your generation like I'm that much older than you, but I think I technically fall on the back end of being a millennial, technically speaking, like where my birthday falls. But the Gen Z generation, regardless of who's in it, is thought to like not drink as much. And I think you saw that on display after the game the other night.
Well, and the comments on Instagram, or at least on social media that I saw, everyone was going, they were doing something else after the game. They were celebrating a different way, and probably not with. A lot of people were saying it wasn't with beer.
Yeah, and maybe that's the case. I don't know. I just think it's funny that, like, again, these guys that, because again, when you look at celebrations over the years of the great NBA teams and whatever sport it is, like they're going crazy in there, and like OKC seemed a lot more reserved. Like these guys, like, oh, we're supposed to drink this stuff.
I mean, even if they weren't going to drink it, at least spray it around.
Yeah,
like that's the whole. They were, everybody had goggles and whatnot before even going in there. There was a criminal amount of beer left over.
By the way, I hate the goggles. I think the goggles are goofy looking. I think they're dumb. Like, I know it's been a thing for a while, so I've gotten used to it, but like, it's very cringy to me when I watch these grown men that have accomplished this great goal. All right, got to put on my safety goggles before we celebrate. Like, no, just have at it. I get it. Getting champagne in your eyes burns, but like, that wasn't a problem for the first however many decades of celebrating respective sports championships. And I did whoever the company that makes the goggles in be like, hey, we can market this if we start showing up in these locker rooms after games.
Well, it's like if you're not going to create a splash zone with the beer, it's like, why even bother?
I don't know.
It bothered me a lot that there was so much like if you're not going to drink it, at least parade it around.
Yeah, pour it on each other. I don't know.
Yeah,
do something with it.
Take a shower.
Pour it on the trophy. You can't pour it in the trophy like you do with the Stanley Cup, but I don't know. Have fun with it some kind of way.
That must be really fun.
Do the Stone Cold Steve Austin. Clink them together and then just pour it on top of yourself.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of ways to do that. The funny thing about the NBA calendar is we immediately go into the draft. Like with football, okay, Super Bowl, free agency comes on a little bit later. Then boom, the draft is 3-4 months after that. Like the NBA, you blink, you go from the Larry O'Brien Trophy being handed out to the draft coming up tonight. Like it's one of the more interesting sports calendars, and I get it. They don't have a long off season, but like, dang, we can't wait like a week or two to do this.
I see, but like it's exciting because it keeps the focus still kind of on the league, jumping right in. But it would be kind of cool if it would, it gave it a little bit of a buffer, like the NFL draft. You kind of get time to like let the season marinate a little bit, think about it. But I don't know. A lot of those the teams that are going to be making those crucial picks are not necessarily thinking about winning a championship. So
yeah, well, one of those picks we expect here in the first round tonight is Colin Murray Boyles from South Carolina. Coach Lamont Paris speaking the other day on what an NBA team is going to get by drafting CMB.
I just had a conversation 2 days ago with a team that told me they were going to potentially be in a position to trade up to where they would be in his draft window, and that I looked really smart because that just happened. And so, they may or may not take him, but the conversations I had was about who he is as a player, and this guy's going to owe me a percentage of his salary when this is all said and done, if you could hear these conversations that I have with these guys. But the beauty of that is that I tell them the truth, and I think that's why they continue to call me, because they know I'm not in the business of gaslighting at all. I want them to trust what I say, and so, but I tell them the truth. And what I continue to tell all these teams is that, it's always you're drafting guys on ceiling, and and a lot of times they do. They want to draft a guy that maybe one day, even if he's a higher risk guy, maybe one day he's got a chance to be MVP of the league. You're looking for that. But I recommend to these guys to draft Colin not on his ceiling, but draft him on his floor, because his floor is it would surprise me. Now, this is saying a lot, because I watched last night's game, and Hartenstein was at the free throw line, and they said in the G League, he was in the G League finals, and he made 8 threes and had a triple-double and was the MVP. And then he's got a small offensive role for Oklahoma City. Big role in general, but a small offensive role. So I say this with a grain of salt or 3, but like once Colin learns, and I don't profess to know the NBA like that, but once Colin learns how to move in the NBA, what the rules are, the rule changes, there are different rules. Once he learns those things, I think any team that gets him is going to be shocked at how viable an option he would be to actually put in a game.
Again, depending on what mock drafts you're looking at, he can go anywhere from like 10th to maybe 17th or 20th, sometime around that middle to high round or high end of the first round coming up tonight, which obviously is great for South Carolina in terms of the promotion for the program. And you hope that Colin Murray Boyles ends up in a good place, that he can have a long, successful NFL career. There are concerns. His shooting ability, especially from 3, never really kind of materialized. We always heard about it. Like Coach Paris coming away from his freshman year when they made the tournament was like, hey, this guy's got a whole arsenal with a 3-pointer that we haven't unleashed yet. And unfortunately, we just never ended up seeing that much in his time here at South Carolina. So can a pro team get that out of him, or is that something you're just not going to really count on? Obviously, he plays hard. I give him a lot of credit for the back end of this season when South Carolina was playing for nothing, right? We knew they weren't going to make the tournament. They weren't going to tear their way through the SEC, and he played hard all the way to the end. That game against Arkansas in the SEC tournament, he's bloodied, he's beaten, he's battered, he's limping around the court. He's still giving 110%. So he left it all out there for South Carolina, which, that's one of those guys you're never going to have to worry about having, I think, an attitude problem at the next level.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, you kind of brought up you could see him going in anywhere between 10 and 17. I think a good fit for him kind of in that bunch of teams would be San Antonio, just because you were kind of saying, in terms of shooting, there might be a few gaps in his game overall, but I think that would be a great system to kind of work his way into, and he would complement, players like Wembanyama and some of that front court as well, just also trying to, fix some of the kinks in his game, but his size is very favorable, and I think he's got a huge ceiling for how he could develop really as a player.
Yeah, now he's going to have to, obviously buckle the chin strap and go in there and be physical at the next level because I know the size is a little bit of a concern for somebody playing his spot. But again, he's shown his ability to get to the basket here at South Carolina, and he's going to have to do that again. How long does he have to develop to get to the point of being a everyday guy at the NBA level? We'll have to see. But it's been neat to watch him here at Carolina, even though overall speaking, the success of the program wasn't necessarily indicative of how well he played.
I think it's also interesting too because I feel like his role, like we could potentially see his role shift a little bit as he moves into the NBA. Like his size, especially here in South Carolina, he was kind of forced to play, like the 4 or the 5. But I feel like more in the NBA, I could see him more of like definitely still in that forward kind of role. But if they bumped him down to the 3, I feel like that his size would favor that a little bit more. And then once you kind of work those kinks out, he's kind of a better defensive matchup, especially for a lot of those, small forwards, especially in the NBA.
We'll see what happens with him. The big story of the first round, though, is Ace Bailey out of Rutgers, who has canceled several meetings and workouts with teams leading up. He's obviously got a very high ceiling when it comes to his talent and potential, but he's already rubbing a lot of people the wrong way in his pre-draft process. I think the question becomes of will he fall and how far could he possibly fall based on his actions leading up to the draft tonight.
I mean, the biggest concern for me that I was kind of looking over was he's been listed as 6'10" all year, and that was why I kind of had him as one of my top 3 prospects for most of the year. But then he goes to the combine and he's 6'7", and then he's canceling workouts with all these teams, like especially the 76ers. Like, Did you see what Paul George and the governor of Pennsylvania had to say?
Yeah, when the governor's coming at you, that's pretty bad. Like, you better be a superstar, man. Like, you better live up to your billing or else this is going to look really bad.
It's just, I thought it was funny. My uncle's also Josh Shapiro. He's just not the governor of Pennsylvania.
Okay.
But
good distinction.
But I just, when you have somebody, and I can't disagree with it either. When you have a workout planned, you cancel it the day of, what are you necessarily hiding? And then they're asking him in the interviews too, like, what are you focused on? Like, you can control going to these workouts. You say you're focused on basketball.
Sure.
You can, control how your play looks in those workouts. And I don't know if it was a case of being afraid of looking at guys like Shedeur Sanders or something like that. Maybe he was afraid he was going to go to this workout and not play well, or thought his stock was going to drop because of that. But I mean, if he's been hiding something like that all year, it's like
he's going to get his opportunity in the first round because of how talented he is. But I think whatever team drafts him is going to have to keep one eye open and hope this does not materialize into other things as time goes along. Because again, great talent, but you don't want some of these issues to start rearing their ugly head once you have them on your roster.
Yeah, if I'm Philly, I'm probably not taking him at 3. I think he's going to slide to 6 and go to Washington, who now just recently traded for C.J. McCollum yesterday in a trade that also involved Jordan Poole. So I think they might complement each other fairly nicely, but I don't know. I feel like Washington hasn't really gotten a break since the whole John Wall, Bradley Beal arc.
We'll see what happens in NBA draft coming up tonight. Again, we expect to hear Colin Murray Bowles get his name called in the first round. Coming up next, Jen Jensen from the early game joining me to talk some racing ahead of NASCAR's return to Atlanta this upcoming weekend. We'll talk some Aaron Rodgers a little bit later on in the hour as well, as he kind of maybe announced his retirement. We'll see. That's coming up. It is the Extra Points. Our head and Sam Shapiro along with you on your Wednesday on the game. All right, welcome back into the Extra Point. Tyler Head along with you here on your Wednesday on the Game. Time to talk some racing as we do each and every Wednesday with Jen Jensen of the early game. The dog days of summer are here, but the NASCAR season continues on. And this past weekend, we got a little bit of a different kind of race. Came down to fuel mileage, and Chase Briscoe finally gets his first win in his first season at Joe Gibbs Racing, third career win overall. And boy, was he on pins and needles the entire time, trying to make sure he had enough fuel to get to the end.
Man, no kidding. And to be able to hold off Denny Hamlin, teammate there, that was pretty impressive driving. You just wonder, was he really mastering the fuel mileage? Was he kind of figuring it out as he went along? Because it seemed like at one point they thought it was a little bit closer.
Yeah.
But then it seemed like, well, he ended up being okay. So did they have the numbers skewed a little bit, making him work a little hard, or how did that work out?
Well, he had enough to do a pretty lengthy burnout.
Exactly.
I believe he drove it to victory lane as well. So either they lied to him about how much fuel that he had to save, or he just did a really, really good job saving that much to where it was, never in doubt. We'll get into the specifics of the Prime Broadcasting as a whole in a minute, but I thought they did a really good job, analyzing everything with that. They have the burn bar that shows, average mile per gallon. They were showing the telemetry when he was letting off, and they did a really good job. And in a race that, let's be honest, overall maybe wasn't the most thrilling. It was certainly hard to pass once you got into a green flag run, but I found myself immersed into what Briscoe was doing, trying to save fuel, that it kind of masked some of the inefficiencies of the race at the end of the day, which a good broadcast should be able to do.
Yeah, exactly. I did enjoy that too, because again, I kind of geek out on some of that telemetry and everything. And I think that really did help, because especially those last 23, 25 laps where he was pretty much just follow the leader, and Hamlin really couldn't gain on Briscoe. And, you saw maybe Blaney moving around a little bit, but for the most part, it wasn't as thrilling as earlier in the race it had been. So the telemetry was a lot of fun. I love when they do that. I love when they didn't in this one, but I love when they'll show the pedals and the footwork and everything, especially on road courses and stuff too. So that's a great part of the Prime broadcast.
Pretty significant win for Chase Briscoe, again, his first since joining Joe Gibbs Racing this year after Martin Truex retired at the end of last season. And we've seen them have speed in qualifying. Three poles a couple weeks back. They're showing up to the track with good stuff. It's just putting together an entire race. And obviously in victory lane, that's been the problem for them. But they led almost half of this entire race. And, kind of wonder, obviously locked themselves in the playoff now with the win, if this can kind of be the igniting point for them. Because I've always believed that Chase Briscoe has been very talented, going back to his days in Xfinity where he was winning a ton of races there. I just think when he got up to Cup with Stewart-Haas Racing, that eventually would fold at the end of last season. I just didn't think he had what he needed to compete. And now he's with one of the top organizations. And I'm interested to see if this can kind of be the tipping point for a lot more success to come here soon.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think he's in good equipment, a good team, and I think Bass Pro's got to be pretty darn happy, to see their car in victory lane, because I know, again, with Martin Truex Jr., just wasn't seeing as much of that in the last couple of years, and what an exciting launch for him. I think this season, and I don't question whether we might see him again in victory lane, but if not, what a great first start.
Yeah, he's a guy that's easy to root for. He's from your area of the country there, and Mitchell, Indiana kid that grew up racing dirt, and he's got a really good story. Moved down to North Carolina without really knowing what his future held, and slept on couches and worked in shops. He's an old school type of guy in a lot of ways. That really had to grind to get where he is, and again, now he's with legitimately one of the best organizations in the sport, and is finally able to see a little bit of that success that he's been waiting for.
Yeah, and again, to do it in pretty convincing fashion, where literally you kept Hamlin, who has won 7 times there. So you were able to hold him off, and not really, Hamlin couldn't gain on him. So I think overall, just a huge win for him and the team.
Denny Hamlin had an interesting week this past week, as of course his son was born. He missed the Mexico race last week. Ryan Truex filled in for him, and maybe that was playing a little bit of chess instead of checkers, because the entire field was very sick after the Mexico race. We know, obviously, when you go down there, the air quality is different. They talk about the water and stuff like that was getting people sick. And a lot of drivers last weekend, even SVG, who won, were talking about not feeling well, and that seemed to carry over this weekend as well. Ryan Blaney got out of his car and really couldn't even stand up after the race. And a lot of drivers getting fluids and IVs and all that kind of stuff. It seems like Mexico, the effects of it at least, have lingered for another week.
Yeah, I think that the timing, if they choose to do Mexico again, I really think you need an off week or something in between them. Just again, that's a long distance to travel. You're there for 3 days, and especially because they came from Michigan. And just overall, I think it needs to maybe be thought out a little bit better as to how they would handle all of that.
Yeah, I don't think, again, I have a theory that Montreal was supposed to go in that place because that would make a lot more sense going to Michigan, Montreal, than Pocono, instead of traversing the entire country north and south 3 weeks in a row. So yeah, I think they can definitely look at that logistically next year to hopefully figure out something better. Because again, I think the Mexico race was a success, but again, there's always those unintended consequences. Nobody thinks about, hey, the entire field might get sick if we go down there, but something to definitely consider if you're going to go back next year.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not a criticism of where they were or the track or the racing or anything like that. It's just, like you said, unintended consequences from traveling internationally that you kind of maybe have to keep in mind and kind of plan for accordingly.
So Pocono was the 5th and final race of NASCAR on Prime in their inaugural, brief little summer stint here. Most of the same crew will be on with TNT over the next 5 weeks, though it's kind of a different behind the camera and production crew. So I'm interested to see how that maybe looks a little bit different in Atlanta in the next couple weeks going forward. But I got to say, I think Prime knocked it out of the park. I mean, they really gave, I think, what every NASCAR fan wants in terms of the in-depth analysis, talking about like covering Chase Briscoe and saving fuel at the end of the race. They gave a long post-race show, which is something that people have wanted for a long time. I think they truly took all the elements of what make a broadcast great and put that forward. And it's been a really enjoyable 5 weeks. And even again, a Pocono that maybe wasn't the overall most exciting race. Same thing can be said for the late stages of Mexico last week and maybe Nashville a couple weeks ago. They made it exciting, though, with the way the broadcast was put together.
Yeah, I agree. I think there were just a lot of elements to it that made the broadcast special. And I just wonder, is TNT, have they learned a little bit from that? Like, are they going to make any change? I mean, I know it's kind of a late 11th hour, but I just wonder if they're seeing the success of that. And I would like to think that the networks are looking at it going, there's been a lot of positive feedback.
Yeah, and I think, what most people are hoping for is this gets the attention of a broadcast partner like Fox that again, has been doing it for a very, very long time. But the past couple of years, I think the quality has definitely dipped, and NBC does a fine job. And I think, there's certainly things they can improve on, but I think they're not too far behind Prime. But Fox is definitely the one that needs to get it together a little bit. And I really hope that seeing the feedback, seeing the positivity of the Prime broadcast can make everybody better. Again, high tide raises all ships, and that's kind of what we want, because again, we love the sport, love watching the sport, and we want it to be presented in the best way possible, which again, I think Prime set the standard for over these past 5 weeks.
Yeah, and I think originally people weren't sure what to expect, and I think they really did. They knocked it out of the park. Again, from graphics to telemetry to the just every element of the broadcast. I don't think there were a lot of complaints.
We head on to Atlanta this upcoming weekend as TNT takes over the coverage. Have you filled out a in-season tournament bracket yet?
I have filled out part of it. I need to get that done because, hey, why not participate? If I can win $1 million, I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I filled mine out yesterday, and we'll see what happens. I don't know if this is harder to get perfect than the NCAA bracket. I do think it's a nice little twist with Atlanta being a super speedway now that there's no telling what could happen. You can have the fastest car and end up finishing dead last because you get caught up in someone else's mess. So I think that'll throw a lot of people for a loop. I'm been surprised that it hasn't gotten as much coverage leading up to this starting. Because again, this was kind of hatched a year ago. Like Dirty Mo Media did one. Danny Hamlin kind of came up with the idea, and then it really hasn't been talked about since. So does this get more people interested in the middle of the season when it comes to like sports betting and all that kind of stuff? We'll see. And I'm assuming TNT will have coverage for it, in terms of keeping up with who's doing what and your brackets and all that kind of stuff. But I don't know. It's worth a shot. I mean, other sports are doing in-season tournaments, so why not?
Oh, exactly. And I think the concept, and NASCAR put something out earlier today where it was a video with Ryan Blaney and Ricky Stenhouse Jr. and Josh Berry and a couple of them, and they were talking about the concept. And basically it was almost like a brainstorming session of how they came up with the concept, and it was a good way to really explain what this bracket challenge is going to look like. And I really like some of the elements of it. I think it's going to be great. So I just would love to see the hype get out there and let people know about it.
Yeah, and again, we'll go week by week and see how it turns out and see if anybody can turn in a perfect bracket. Things get rolling this weekend with Atlanta. I'm excited. I'm going to be there. I hope the rain
I'm so
stays
excited
away.
for you.
I've been watching the weather like a hawk, and again, in the summertime, you just never really know. So fingers crossed we get some good weather this weekend. I'm taking my nephew to his first ever race, by the way.
Oh my gosh, he's going to have an absolute blast. All right, so I need to kind of get a pick in there and maybe an inside thing so I get the right pick for this week.
Yeah, I'm excited to see it. He doesn't have like a favorite. I just bought him like a generic NASCAR shirt, and hopefully it leaves a good impression on him. So I'm excited.
I hope so. I think Uncle Tyler will take good care of him and kind of get him in the fold and get him hooked.
Well, hopefully it's a good weekend, and hopefully we have some good to talk about this time next week.
I'm looking forward to it.
It is the Extra Point. She's Jen Jensen from the early game, and we'll chat more NASCAR coming up next Wednesday. Appreciate it as always, Jen.
Thank you.
More Extra Point coming up next here on your Wednesday on the game. Welcome back in. Extra Point. Ed and Sam Shapiro along with you on your Wednesday here on the game. Sam, you're a resident in New York. You got any friends that are Mets fans?
Yes, actually, my buddy from college. Shout out Jackson Roberts. He's a big Mets guy.
Well, they are yet again a candidate for who sprung a leak. Brought to you by our friends over at American Leak Detection. They've now dropped 10 out of their last 11. If they lose tonight, it'll be 11 out of the last 12. And last night, it seemed like they were maybe on their way to a win against the Braves, and then the wheels end up falling off in the sixth inning where they surrendered 5 runs in the top of the sixth to fall 7-4 and lose yet another series, and again, have now lost 10 out of their last 11 for the Mets, who are now a game and a half back after having a decent little lead in the NL East like a week and a half, 2 weeks ago. You
know what this means? We got to bring back Grimace.
Yes, that's right. Grimace was the catalyst for... It's like the midpoint of last year where they kind of went on that little bit of run. So, yeah, you need to bring Grimace back.
Hashtag bring back Grimace to Citi Field. We could use it right about now, especially with, loss to the Braves.
Yeah, they'd come in to this prior streak on a 6-game winning streak. So, a high of high immediately to a low of low.
Well, they really should do some sort of partnership with them. That would be cool.
You would think. I mean, McDonald's and a big brand like the Mets, you would think it'd be easy, but I guess not. But hey, the Mets will continue to Met as they often do. Yeah. And last night was a perfect example of that. Over to football now. Aaron Rodgers yesterday on the Pat McAfee show with kind of an announcement, maybe, kind of, sort of.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure this is it. That's why we just did a 1-year deal. Steelers didn't need to, put any extra years on that or anything. So, this was really about finishing with a lot of love and fun and peace for the career that I've had. I mean, I played 20 freaking years. It's been a long run, and I've enjoyed it. And what better place to finish than in one of the cornerstone franchises of the NFL with Mike Tomlin and a great group of leadership and great guys in the city that expects you to win.
We kind of figured this would be the case when he signed the 1-year deal, as he alluded to. Again, the age, the injuries, all that kind of stuff. I don't see him playing that much longer, so this may be the final year we do get to see Aaron Rodgers in the NFL. But it begs a question for me, because I think talent-wise, Rodgers is legitimately one of the greatest of all time. Now, accomplishment-wise, he only had the one Super Bowl, which people are going to continually knock him for, and I get that. But from a pure playing the quarterback position standpoint, he is legitimately one of the best. My question becomes, as we go into this likely final year for him, let's compare him to the other best in Tom Brady and Peyton Manning. Tom Brady had a good final year, but not a great postseason run. They got bounced by the Cowboys in the wild card round of the playoffs before Brady announced his retirement. On the flip side, Peyton Manning had an atrocious final year at quarterback, statistically speaking. Got benched during that season, by the way, but they won the Super Bowl. So what would Aaron Rodgers take? Would he rather take a season where he plays well, but the team doesn't, or he plays terribly and the team's really good?
I think he takes the season where he's maybe not playing his best football, but if they go, at least to an AFC conference championship or a Super Bowl, even if they don't win. I mean, Mike Tomlin knows how to win football games, and he's got pieces on this offense that he could make it work, even if he's not throwing 250, 350 yards, multiple touchdowns a game. I mean, the guy's the oldest player in the NFL.
Yep.
So, I mean, it's interesting, you play that cut from Pat McAfee's show yesterday, and he, finishing with a lot of love is a very gray area. So I personally think he would kind of be okay with either, but I think he would be a lot happier with the team going farther and him playing rather than him balling out and then, going 5-12, kind of like how the Jets did last year.
I always go back to egos, right? Aaron Rodgers has a very big ego. I don't think, even if they did make a deep run in the playoffs, if he's not playing well, if he's not one of the catalysts for why they're playing well, I don't know how that sits with him. So I almost think, and look, here's the thing. We've said this before. Him going to the Steelers doesn't suddenly make them a Super Bowl contender, right? Like, I don't think they're going to go on this deep postseason run. I could very realistically see him having a respectable season numbers-wise, them winning 9 to 10 games maybe, making the playoffs as a wild card, and then losing on the road at somebody, in the first week or something along those lines. That's just kind of how I see this going now. And I heard Mike Greenberg, bring this up on Get Up this morning. This time last year, nobody was saying that the Commanders were going to go and be in the NFC Championship game, and they went on that run. So crazier things can happen, but I would kind of lean more towards the Brady-esque kind of final year where the numbers are good, the team is good to decent, but I'm not expecting them to do much when they get to the playoffs if they make it.
Yeah, I agree with you in terms of the wanting to be responsible for the success, but I don't think he's going to need to, he might need to ball out for, for the team to be successful, but I do think that, I just think he definitely wants to be one of the main cast members in that lineup, so to speak. So if the team is, I do kind of agree with the whole ego thing. If he's playing terrible and the team's doing well, he's not going to be as happy as he would if he were bowling out and the team was playing kind of mediocre.
Now, that Peyton Manning Denver Broncos team, their defense was incredible. And again, Manning got benched during that season because he couldn't throw a football to save his life. Brock Osweiler ended up playing for him. I think Trevor Siemian played some of that season too, which shows you how bad of a year that was for Peyton Manning. But that defense could hold teams under like 14 points. So it's like, hey, managed to get us 2 touchdowns and we'll take care of the rest. The Steelers are always good on defense. I don't know if they're going to be at that kind of elite level where even if Rodgers has a terrible season or a bad season, they're going to be able to pick up that slack. You know what I mean? Like, I think in order for them to have a good year, he's probably going to have to do a good deal of the work for that.
At least on the offensive front, and I think he's got some pieces, at least on defense. This is still a defense with Minkah Fitzpatrick. They just picked up Darius Slay. TJ Watt's there. Cameron Hayward is also a great edge guy. So defensively, I mean, I'm not saying this is the Denver Broncos defense.
Yeah, they're always good, and that's been a big reason why they've still been able to win more games than they lose in these past couple of years since Big Ben retired, because the defense has always been good. The offense and the quarterback situation has been atrocious, but the defense, if you have a good defense, you can hang in the league, which Pittsburgh always has.
I'm hoping that he at least wins a few more games than he did on the Jets, just to kind of at least put a somewhat of a decent bow on top of a great career. Really, he's kind of the whole face of the Packers franchise.
And like whatever happens this year, it doesn't tarnish his legacy, right? I mean, look at Peyton Manning. Yes, winning the Super Bowl certainly helps, but we don't think of Peyton Manning in that final year. We think about him the year prior where he threw 55 touchdowns, and or 2 years prior when he set the league record. Like, we always remember the best of whatever that player was, regardless of how their career ends. So even if Aaron Rodgers has a terrible year statistically and he gets benched at some point for Mason Rudolph or whoever ends up taking over the quarterback spot, years from now, we're still going to remember the Packers, Aaron Rodgers, that won a Super Bowl, won a ton of MVPs, and, unfortunately didn't always have what he had needed around him to get back to another Super Bowl. Like, the Jets years and the Steelers years are going to be easily forgotten, I feel like.
I don't see Pittsburgh being ultimate Super Bowl contenders now that they have Aaron Rodgers added. And it's funny, this wide receiver room looks completely different than it did a year ago. No more George Pickens. You got DK Metcalf instead. You got a veteran guy in Robert Woods who's a little bit, past his prime. I definitely think they have pieces to make the playoffs. But I think if he played poorly and he ended on a Peyton Manning kind of note and they, for some magical reason did actually win a Super Bowl, I don't think he'd be upset about that either.
Yeah, again, we'll see what happens. It's going to be a story to follow the entire season with, again, what's likely Aaron Rodgers' final year in the NFL. We'll come back, wrap up hour number 2, hit a little start, bench, cut, summertime treats. That's coming up next. It is the Extra Points. Our head and Sam Shapiro along with you on your Wednesday on the Game. Welcome back in. Extra Point, Tyler Head and Sam Shapiro wrapping up hour number 2. Sam, in case you haven't noticed, it's hot.
Just a little bit.
Really, really hot. We hit, I think, 100 yesterday. Supposed to be around there today. Heat index is well over 100, so even if the temperature says 98, if it feels like 108, I consider it to be 108. Let's be honest.
Yeah, I mean, it really, you go outside and it's like, and it hits you with that like oven wave, like when you're at home and you're making chicken nuggets or something. You open the door and it just smacks you.
Because again, I grew up in Georgia, so the weather's exactly the same, and we had a door that went to our garage, and that's typically how we go in and out of the house is through the garage. And in the summertime, because I'm trying to think, the garage faced west, so afternoon the sun's kind of on that side. You would open the door to the garage if the garage door was open, and it would just like, it almost knock you over, that just like wave of humidity, like punching you in the face, saying, hello, summer's here.
Yeah, you can, I feel like heat you can, like that, you can physically see, and it's almost, it's a little nauseating sometimes.
Yeah, so there's a lot of different ways to stay cool in the summertime to deal with the heat. So a little bit of a start bench cut here as we wrap up hour number 2. Popsicles, ice cream, and slushies. As far as like frozen sweet treats go, who you starting, who you benching, who you cutting?
I think it's criminal not to start ice cream.
Okay.
You can't go, you know, you can, the possibilities, the toppings you could go with, the versatility in terms of, you know, hard ice cream, soft ice cream, milkshakes. You can drink it, you could eat it. I'm a cone guy personally, but this weather, I feel like
can get a little messy.
Yeah,
when it starts to melt.
Well, if you're not a little messy, are you really enjoying it?
That's true. That's true. I guess I don't like it getting all over my hand while I'm trying to eat it. Do you have like a go-to flavor, by the way? Like what's your
chocolate?
Number one, just simple up, straight up chocolate.
Love chocolate. Anything with cookie dough in it is usually pretty
Good
gas.
One. Yep.
Anything with chocolate chips in it is usually good. I know my brother's a big mint chocolate chip guy. He also likes any kind of like Rocky Road peanut butter. Also usually pretty solid.
Yeah, I'm a big Rocky Road person.
I recently got into like raspberry ice cream though. Like raspberry chip is like a dark horse candidate.
I don't think I've had that before.
Yeah, no. Any kind of like raspberry ice creams usually, don't sleep on it.
Okay, I have to check that out. So you're starting ice cream. Who are you benching?
You know, before I was really thinking popsicles, but a spiked slushie right now
goes pretty good.
Sounds pretty good, and it's a great way to stay cool. Also, you'd be surprised that the ice is a hidden warrior in this heat, and it definitely helps you keep much cooler than you think.
So are you cutting popsicles then? I know you're a big Rocket Pop fan.
Yeah, I might have to cut popsicles on this one just because, again, with the versatility, like you could get a mango slushie, a strawberry slushie. I don't know if I get a chocolate slushie. That's kind of not.
Do they make chocolate slushies? Isn't that just essentially ice cream at that point?
Well, yeah, I'm not. I don't think so because with the slushie you got more ice, so there's more water in it versus like the ice cream you've got kind of like the creamy texture from the milk. So
I guess so.
But yeah, I don't know. Something about a Rocket Pop in July.
Yeah, it's Americana.
Yeah.
So starting ice cream, benching slushies, cutting popsicles.
Yes, sir.
I'm probably gonna have to agree with you on that. Like again, 7-Eleven, I guess, is best known for their slushies. And the great thing about a slushie is even once it melts, you still have a cold drink. Right, so even if it melts all the way and just becomes a liquid, now you have a drink, right? Like that's the neat part about it. And obviously, it's contained in the cup, so it's not going to get everywhere. Like I enjoy popsicles, and like I don't actively buy popsicles, but if somebody gave me one, I'm usually like, oh, this is good. But they can get messy unless you're like in the little sleeved popsicles that we all had growing up. If you got one like on a stick, as it starts to melt, you have to kind of eat around the stick, and like that's one of the messier frozen treats that I feel like knocks it down a little bit for me. Because, again, I'm not trying to make a mess and be sticky after eating this.
And at least, you know, ice cream you can eat in a cup, too. You can't really eat a popsicle in a cup. You're kind of...
Unless you put it in the cup to begin with, knowing that it's going to melt. But that's anti-popsicle. That's not how popsicles are meant to be eaten.
It's like eating a Kit Kat, taking a bite out of the whole bar instead of like breaking it.
Like there's a process to eating this thing that you have to adhere to when you do. And yeah, if you just put the popsicle in a bowl or whatever, it's like, well, it's not really, doesn't feel like a popsicle then.
Do you have a favorite popsicle?
I like grape. You know, like the fruit flavored ones. Like, and then you get to drink the juice at the end if you have it in the sleeve. So yeah, but yeah, I'd probably start ice cream, bench slushies, and cut popsicles too. So we'll see you next week. It'll be July by then, and man, the year's flying by.
Just a little bit.
Yep. Stay cool. We'll see you next week. Up next, Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs here on the Game. 11 o'clock Wednesday morning. Welcome in Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler West and Chris, along with you here in the Herndon Chevrolet Studios, halfway through the week as we navigate through the middle part of the summer, inching ever closer to the start of the college football season. How we doing today, guys?
Everything's going well.
Excellent.
I'm excited. Apparently, there's a prospect of some food down here.
Yes.
In a little while.
Little company meeting, party, whatever you want to call it.
Hopefully, Firehouse Subs, of course.
Of course.
Will be in the spread.
Now that we have a nice little event space available down here, we can do this with a little bit more of an open room compared to cramming everybody into the office upstairs. So, yeah, gonna be right outside the window here a little bit as they'll be watching us while they're eating, I guess.
And a Josh Yeldman appearance, Wes.
I don't believe that.
No, I was shocked. I had to make sure it wasn't a Monday. That's normally Josh's day on.
Well, the funny thing,
he's here on Wednesday.
It's an AI, Josh.
The funny thing is, this thing doesn't start for about another 30 minutes. He was down here at like 9:30. I looked out and he was
preparing
down there, sitting by the Pac-Man game, doing something.
I played Pac-Man earlier too.
Yeah, so
I don't know why we have that, but I'm for it.
It's weird. It's weird when there's food. Josh seems to show up for those. But there's always
same with some others around here, though. I feel like
that's true. Yeah, but we've had the whole company show up to Firehouse before.
I was mainly talking about Terry, but
Terry was involved with that. He had to come check out the setup, make sure everything was working right for the show. All the way across in Lexington that day.
Yeah, we do appreciate that, Terry.
But he does kind of run the station, so we can't really say too much, I guess.
Sure.
So, 67 days away from kickoff, South Carolina and Virginia Tech. Wes is on a heater right now when it comes to our daily trivia contest, as he is jumped out to a nice little lead, 8.5 to Chris's 6. Chris had I think a 2-point lead last week at some point, and you gotta get back on the ball. Chris, are you studying? Are you actually like prepping for this now?
Yeah, there was a time we're both doing it. So earlier I was like, you know what, I'm gonna study, and then I got bogged down like actually working on trying to get some like
this is more important, Chris.
Recruiting information and things like that.
Recruiting is secondary. This is more important.
Yes,
this is for glory.
Maybe it is. Yeah, but I don't know why. I guess I was feeling very generous. Plus, I like to reward good work, so I gave. I said give Wes an extra half point. He's really opening it up on me. So.
All right. Well, you guys ready for today's question?
No.
I'm going to need you guys to kind of look up, so I'm making sure you're not looking at your laptop screens here.
Yeah.
Just to be safe.
You can trust me, but
just be safe.
Yeah.
All right. In 1967, South Carolina finished third in the ACC with a record of 5-5. Can you name the other 7 teams in the ACC at that point in time?
No, I cannot.
Do your best, and whoever names the most gets the point. How about that?
Well, but then we're gonna. If the other person starts naming them, then
I'm not going to confirm one way or the other how many you're getting right.
You normally do for West. You're like, are you sure?
UNC,
I won't
NC State, Duke.
There's 8 total.
There's 8 total. South Carolina's one of them, so the other 7.
Okay.
All right, hold on. You said Duke, North Carolina, NC State.
Yep.
Yeah. My history is awful. FSU, Clemson. What am I at?
You were at 5 right now.
Wake Forest.
All right.
Who am I just completely blanking? Georgia Tech.
That's 7. Right?
That's your 7? Yeah, that you named 7.
That's 7 in addition to South Carolina.
All right.
Your 7.
Chris, how many do you think you can name?
All right, so I kind of thought my list was actually going to be the same as yours, maybe like one difference. Okay, Duke, North Carolina State, and Wake. You got the 4 North Carolina schools. Georgia Tech. I'm trying to remember, who else did you even say? Aside from those, Georgia Tech and the North
Clemson
Carolina
and
schools.
FSU.
Yeah, you said Clemson and FSU. But then my list would literally be the exact same as yours, right?
Do you think it's the exact same teams?
I'm trying to think. Clemson, FSU, Georgia Tech, Wake. Yeah. Well, but I'm a little bit FSU. Yeah, I'll go with that.
So you're going to add.
No, you didn't add any.
I didn't add any.
You didn't
I literally had the same list.
Okay, so you're having the exact same list?
Yeah.
So I guess neither of you gets the point then.
Okay.
Who was not in?
So the ACC at that point in time was Clemson, NC State, Wake Forest, Duke, UNC. You guys got those. Virginia and Maryland, the other two. So Georgia Tech and FSU were not a part of the conference at that point in time.
The one that I was really not sure about was FSU. I felt like
they were independent for a while.
I felt like they were the one that I just wasn't sure on. But Georgia Tech. What was the deal with Georgia Tech?
They were they independent at that point in time? Because they were in the ACC then.
I was like semi-confident on Georgia Tech and not much at all. But how did I
don't think I would have never gotten to Maryland though. Honestly, they're just so.
I remember when they moved, but I don't didn't know when. And then Virginia,
I would have got to Virginia eventually.
Yeah,
but my brain for some reason went to Virginia Tech, and I knew they weren't.
That's right.
In it yet.
Both Florida State and Georgia Tech were independents at that point. This was back when there was a billion independents. Carolina would end up becoming one before they went to the SEC, obviously. But, this is back when conferences actually were based off, geography, and you were in neighboring states and didn't have to go that far to travel. Was it, I think it was just when Wes was in here, but we looked back on Carolina's travel for one of the seasons in the 70s, whatever question that was, and their entire season of travel did not add up to the one trip Carolina made to Oklahoma last year.
That makes sense. Yeah. So who won that year? Carolina was third, you said.
Yeah,
you know who won?
That year it was Clemson at 6-0, 6-4 overall. So they lost all their non-conference games. Let's see, they went to.
Are you saying the ACC was weak back then too?
They didn't even go to a bowl game.
God, that's so weird.
That was back when there was 8 bowl games back then. So it took
interesting.
It took more than just having a pulse to go to a bowl game back in the 1960s.
I feel like I had a bait and switch there because I actually was kind of looking over the actual season, and then I was ready for maybe some more South Carolina centric questions, and then you busted out an ACC question on me. I was not ready.
Got to be on your toes.
Yeah, that's right. I'll do better next time.
I'm not the teacher that's going to give you the answers on the study guide. I'm going to get you around the answers. You're going to have a general idea of what the question's going to be, but it's not going to be, hey, guess what? The study guide's the same as the test.
No, he started shifting a little bit now that we've started looking at the Wikipedia.
Well, again, now that you guys are finally studying, you got to step it up a little bit.
You do.
Yeah.
By the way, I do confirm these things after checking Wikipedia first. I do go for second verification.
Second source?
Yes, second source, 101 journalism right there. So we're not just going only off of what Wikipedia tells us.
Well, remember when they used to be like Wikipedia is not a source, but it very much is now.
It very much is. It's at least the starting point.
Everything in there, though, is sourced up anyway.
It is. You can go to the bottom and click on or find the sources to where they get the information. Be like, oh, okay, this is what I need. It's a good reference point, even if you can't list it in your reference page at the end of your project or whatever.
I would like to meet some of the people that do the Wikipedia updates. I remember I was listening to a podcast or something, and they were talking about this guy who just sits around and updates Wikipedia all day.
Yeah.
That's fascinating to me.
Well,
I can't.
And that's what, college professors, high school teachers, told us not to use it because, hey, anybody can go out there and edit it. You create an account, you can go in and change something. But there are people whose jobs is to monitor things to make sure the stuff is correct. Again, let's say after the NBA Finals the other night, somebody went in and changed Jalen Williams' middle name to owns Indiana or owns the Pacers or something like that. It'd stay for
it gets changed out.
Yeah, it'd stay for 20 minutes. You could take a screenshot of it, but then it gets changed back pretty quickly. You know what I mean? Stuff like that.
Those are entertaining.
Those are.
It changed didn't somebody put Shane Beamer as Dabo Swinney's father or something?
Those kind of things.
On Wikipedia. Yeah, those are hilarious.
And again, it'll be up there for a few minutes. You can take a screenshot of it, laugh, and then somebody comes in and corrects it. So most of the stuff can be backed up. But yeah, if you're a college student listening to us, just don't list it on your reference page, or that's going to get you in a lot of trouble.
Tyler, what do you have on the docket for us today?
Well, we can dive into this coming up next because it is NBA Draft Day. CMB. Expected to hear his name called in the first round. Also want to loop back around to the Florida State stuff from yesterday. Kind of look at the Mike Norvell angle of this after what Thomas Castellanos said in reference to the Alabama game, and a Gamecock baseball legend calling it a career at the professional level. So there's your preview for the next 45 minutes. How's that sound?
Let's do it.
So having that coming up next, starting with CMB. It's Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs here in the game.
All right, everyone. Krantz Cooling and Heating, our presenting sponsor on Tuesdays and Thursdays, of course, of the Gamecock Club Hour. You hear about them on the program here all the time because I truly believe in what they are doing at Krantz Cooling and Heating, what they can do for you and your family. Since 1983, they've been a local, reliable service provider and can take care of all of your home or business's HVAC needs. You can go check out their Google reviews, learn more information about what they can do. You can even schedule an appointment by going to their website at krantzcooling.com. That's Krantz, cooling with a K.com. As y'all know, it has been extremely hot in the Midlands as of late. So if you've noticed any problems with your system, if you want to look at getting a new system, maintenance, repairs, installations, Krantz Cooling can do it all for you. Justin Krantz, GM out there, his family, his team, they do an amazing job. They've been to my home. I even sent them out to my mom's house in Irmo. 803-672-3224 or krantzcooling.com.
You're the only one to come in a full suit. Why?
Yeah, you look great.
I got a lot of suits. Might as well show them up.
Crazy face, game face. Yeah, do that. Hold the ball here.
Welcome back in Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler West Chris along with you on your Wednesday here on the game. Tonight, 8 o'clock on ESPN and ABC, it is the NBA Draft, at least the first round of it. And unlike a lot of years, we are expecting to hear a Gamecock hear their name called tonight. That being Colin Murray-Boyles, heard him a little bit there doing some of his promotional stuff leading up to the draft. With the suit on, he'll be in the green room coming up tonight, so excited for him. And again, you kind of depending on where you look at draft projections, somewhere between maybe 10th and 20th and kind of that middle of the first round, and hopefully finds himself a good landing spot. And that's the start of a good and long career at the next level.
Yeah, I guess I finally need to concede that CMB's not going to be back in a Gamecock uniform.
I won that bet.
Yeah, you did. I don't remember what we bet, but you definitely, hats off, you won that one. I mean, I'm excited for the kid, man. And this is, a situation where South Carolina and this staff, they believed in CMB before he was this highly rated guy. By the end of the process, like if you go back and look, it is a little bit in some cases and on some rankings, a little bit like almost like a Nicky Moore or even a Lenora Sellers, where people will go back and be like, well, hey, he was highly rated. Well, when he committed, he was not. And unlike Lenora, CMB was an early commitment to South Carolina, kind of, and he just, kept getting better, or the people who do the rankings just kept getting more information, and we're like, wow, this guy is good. Probably even with that said, with him finishing as a 4-star guy, what was underrated on what he ended up being, and obviously, had 2 great years at South Carolina, and it's one of those guys you pull for because he's local, which is cool, and he's just carried himself in a very just professional manner the entire process.
I have some thoughts on CMB, of course. I have my own trivia question. I'm just making this up.
Yep.
I feel like Wes will get it, but Tyler, you participate as well.
Sure.
All right, so CMB, unless something completely insane happens, is going to be a first-round pick. Who was the last first-round pick for South Carolina basketball? And if you can give the year and the team, you get a bonus.
Did you read my mind? Because I was going to ask you guys this exact same question.
Okay. I would have guessed.
I'll let Wes
take
this
one. It's just on me.
Yeah, it's on you. Man on an island.
I mean, it was Ronaldo Bachman.
Yep.
New York Knicks. And, oh, God, 2004, 2005, I think, hold on. I'm going to try to think this through. They won the NIT in 2005 or 2004 the first time. It was like 2004, 2005
Yeah, I always
season.
get it mixed up because you got the
It was 2004, 2005 season. So they get drafted because they did it back-to-back. They get drafted. It's either 2005 or 2006, I think.
Yeah, it's 06.
06.
Does he deserve any bonus points for that?
No, I don't want bonus points. So.
No, you don't.
No.
You get 1 point in my trivia contest that I just made up today.
Now, there was a thought that Gigi could have gone 2 years ago, ends up falling in the second round, but yes, it's been that long since the Gamecock heard their name called in the first.
I was wondering if somebody would trip up and be like, oh, Gigi Jackson, he was a first-round pick, and you kind of just, you just kind of forget because he was mocked in some first rounds and things like that. But I remember with Ronaldo, like he was an NBA prospect, very interesting player, and had a unique skill set. The draft that year was on my birthday in the summer, and so we were at somebody's house, and we had the draft on in the background, and so I wasn't really watching, but like volume was loud, and I was about to go outside, and I just heard in the background David Stern comes up to the podium, the 20th pick, New York Knicks select Ronaldo Bachman. I went, what? Like, because it wasn't really expected.
Sure.
I think Isaiah Thomas was the GM at that time, and he kind of got hammered for that pick, but it was good for him.
Yeah, cool accomplishment. Kind of going back to the Gigi Jackson thing, and this is two guys that at least had the potential to be first-round picks in the Paris era, but a very big difference between G.G. Jackson, who reclassified and was thought even before ever playing at South Carolina as a potential lottery pick, again, ended up sliding in the second round. But regardless, very highly touted guy coming out of high school, obviously was committed to North Carolina before coming to South Carolina. But again, CMB, despite being a local guy, again, flew under the radar a little bit, all things considered, especially when you talk about guys that were thought to be lottery picks straight up before ever playing in a college game. But again, played well enough here in 2 years to put himself in position to be one of those middle round picks or mid first round picks.
Yeah, and I'm excited, obviously, to see where he goes. And just, it is a unique skill set that CMB brings as well. And so, I think, and I'm not an NBA head, but I think it's going to be important that it's with a team that is going to put him in a position to succeed, obviously, that is going to value that skill set, that is going to run a system that fits it. And, there's been some disagreement I've seen from the people who really cover this stuff on just where he should land. When you look at the jumper, the ability to shoot from the perimeter. And now one thing we've heard, one thing coaches have told us, we didn't necessarily see it quite come out last season, although we did see it in spurts. We saw him get more comfortable shooting from behind the arc. And, is that something that we know this kid's going to work? We know he's a worker. We know he's going to do everything in his power to have success. I mean, 2-3 years from now, we may be talking about him as a guy who does have that as part of his game. Not that he's going to go out there and launch a bunch of three-pointers every night, but to where teams have to respect that ability. And, you throw in all the other stuff. He does check a lot of boxes. He can defend. Incredible passer. I mean, I could see CMB being one of those guys who is not necessarily the superstar everybody's talking about, but stays in the league, for a decade just because he does so many small things well and is just an excellent teammate. And I don't just mean a teammate off the court. I mean an excellent teammate on the floor in terms of making things happen for other people.
I was looking at ESPN's latest mock draft by Jonathan Giovanni and Jeremy Wu. They have him going at 12th to the Chicago Bulls in the first round. And the range is kind of, 10 to 16-ish, they point out. And they point out a lot of the same things that you said, Wes. He's a strong passer. He's young still. He can defend. He is really good around the rim. He can draw fouls. They even say here, NBA teams say Murray Boyles rates historically well in their draft models, which really stood out to me. And they apparently have a need also in their front court. They say he's tough, unselfish, versatile defensively, and he's a playmaker. So he's a high-floor player. The thing is, I do remember hearing that, going into Collins' freshman year, remember before he got mono, hey, this kid can really shoot. You should see him in practice. And I think a lot of fans for his couple years here, why aren't we seeing that as much in games? Look, we're not going to have a debate on why or why not that happened. I do think, though, what that illustrates is there is upside here. If you have a good shot and good mechanics, even if you're not an elite shooter coming into the NBA, it is a trait that can actually be developed. And what I always think of is Al Horford. Not that they're the same player, but Al Horford came in and still playing in the league. I mean, this guy came out, his first season was 07-08. His first 8 years in the league, he averaged half a three-pointer a game attempt. And then all of a sudden in 2015, 2016, he's taken 3 a game to where this past year, he averaged 5 attempts a game and has always hovered around, 35 to 40% shooting on threes. So the point is, for somebody like Colin, you've got this baseline, you're still young, you're actually still developing as a player. I actually think he can add that to his game, and if he can, I think he's got a chance, like you said, Wes, to hang around a while.
Of course, he was a big part of why South Carolina was able to make the tournament now 2 seasons ago, and despite how bad this past season was, Murray Boyles still went out there and had a lot of really solid performances all the way up until the last time we saw him against Arkansas in that game where he's bloodied and bruised, but still going out there giving 110% in his final game as a Gamecock. do we have like a definitive like moment for him in a Gamecock uniform? Like when people think back years and years from now, when they say CMB at South Carolina, is there one thing we're going to think of, one moment that kind of stands out above the rest?
To me, there's a couple things that stick out. Was that his freshman year, the Ole Miss game at home, where he just went off, and then he had I distinctly remember a big block from him in that game. It was like
was that an overtime game?
I can't remember if it was an overtime game or a close win in regulation for South Carolina, but that game. And then, as weird as it is, I actually will strangely remember in a loss him basically bloodied and bruised and just fighting to the literal end of his South Carolina career on a team that we knew was not going to make a run. We knew was not going to win the SEC tournament. And just he could have nobody would have batted an eye if he was just like, I'm too hurt to finish, or if he went through the motions. And he's out there just laying it all on the line in the SEC tournament this year. And so as weird as it is to talk about a loss, like we know what this season was for South Carolina as a team, and just seeing that, I think that mentality will just serve him very well in his career and, in his life too.
I think that block was kind of one of his signature moments. I mean, it came on I can't remember the guy's name from Ole Miss, but not that Colin's small by any means, but it was a 7-footer or 7 foot plus. It was a huge play in the game. He had a great game aside from that.
Sure.
I'd probably pick actually the same moments, and it's not a singular moment in his second year, but and he's not the only one. Like, we talked about that a lot. Like, the team really struggled last year, but never quit, never gave up, and I think he was the leader and kind of the impetus for that. You would always see that, and he had great individual moments, and I think he was always just able to elevate the team. And you look at last year, they weren't as threatening offensively by any means as they were the year prior. So teams were very much keyed in on him, and for him to be able to still have night in and night out the performances that he did, despite being the biggest threat on the floor, I think really says something.
Again, NBA draft coming up tonight at 8 o'clock on ABC and ESPN. Colin Boyles will be there, so when he gets his name called, we'll come out on the stage and all that. So best of luck to him, and excited to see where he goes, which we'll talk about plenty tomorrow on the Thursday show. Coming up next, I want to dive back into what Thomas Castellanos had to say in reference to Florida State's opening game against Alabama, examining the Mike Norvell angle of things. That's coming up next. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs, on your Wednesday on the game.
All right, guys, this episode, as are all of our episodes of the GC Takeover Hour, brought to you by our friends at Firehouse Subs. Head on over to firehousesubs.com or do what we do, download the Firehouse Subs app, hit the Rapid Rescue to go. Order now. It's going to be waiting for you on the shelf at one of the many locations, great locations of Firehouse Subs throughout the Midlands. No matter where you are in the Columbia area, more than likely there is a Firehouse Subs right near you. If you want to try something new, try this new Smokin' Barbecue Triple Stack. There's 2 new versions, the Classic, which we have tried before in the past, and the new Carolina Gold, which features what looks like a more mustard-based barbecue sauce, as many of you probably eat right here in the Midlands anyway. Regardless of which one you go with, or if you go with your all-time favorites, hit up our friends right now for a hot sub just waiting for you, ready to roll. FirehouseSubs.com or the Firehouse Subs app. Order for your lunch right now.
Coach Bowden used to always tell us, specifically around Miami and Florida week, he'd be like, all right, there's going to be a bunch of media attention. Let's make sure we're only say nice things about the opponent. Don't give them anything to fuel their fire. Don't give them any bulletin board material. You know, I guess it's so early in the offseason, you don't think it could happen. And the week of the game, you're a little bit more careful. But I would take the same approach that you did and that your coach did and my coach did. Why give them any added motivation? If anything, you want like a sneak attack. Like you want them to like overlook you and think you're not good, as opposed to, which wake them up a little bit, kick the hornet's nest, if you will. That's what Tommy Castellanos just did. He kicked the hornet's nest, and it's about to find out if he can run away from him or not.
Welcome back in Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler West, Chris, along with you on your Wednesday here in the game. That was voice of former Florida State quarterback and host on Sirius XM, Danny Cannell, analyzing what we talked about yesterday. Thomas Castellanos' very pointed comments about Alabama ahead of their Week 1 matchup down there in Tuscaloosa, saying, hey, they don't got Saban anymore. They're not as scary as they once were. You're putting a very big target on your back for a guy that, again, had a up-and-down season, to say the least, at Boston College. And we kind of looked at this from the Castellanos angle yesterday. I now want to look at this from the Mike Norvell side of things, because this is putting a lot of pressure on the team as a whole, but especially on Mike Norvell, because let's face it, last year was a disaster. You go from a 13-0 would-be playoff team 2 years ago to 2-10, having to give some of your contract back in the offseason to basically make up for how bad you were. And now you have your pressure square on you to make this season better. And now your quarterback's running his mouth ahead of the Week 1 game against Alabama, where there's already a lot of pressure on Norvell. And I think it increases even more given these kind of comments and the attention that's now going on this game heading into week number 1.
Yeah, I really don't want to agree with Danny Cannell on anything, to be honest with you. So this kind of hurts a little bit to have to do that. But, yeah, I mean, we talked about it yesterday. I don't know. There seems to be we've all been around that guy who is more confident than they should be. And then they start saying things, and you're just like, that's how you feel about where you were in this situation? You know what I mean? And just like everybody kind of side-eyes like, is this dude living in the same reality as the rest of us? Like, that's, to me, it just felt like a complete lack of kind of self-awareness. One, that you're talking to a national writer. Two, that you transferred into a new school. Three, he is a pretty good player, but he's not. This doesn't really make him all that likable to me. And, why kick the hornet's nest of Alabama? I don't. What did this stand to gain for him?
Yeah, if you're Norvell, this doesn't do you any favors. I mean, we've talked about this sometimes where, the Diego Pavia stuff, right? Like, let's try to draw some type of comparison or really contrast it. Pavia has already played for his current school at Vanderbilt.
Yep.
And it's different. It's not an apples-to-apples comparison because it's FSU versus Vanderbilt. FSU, although they've struggled as of late, they had that 13-0 season. They've won. They've won a national championship, right? They've a storied program. Pavia came in, and, yeah, he's brash, but he's backed it up at his school. He's elevated them. He's beaten Bama.
Yep. He has that moment to fall back on.
Yeah, he has that moment to fall back on, and even he didn't go trash New Mexico State. Oh, I'm too good to play there. The other guys around me weren't that good, and we all talked about all his comments from the podcast, the Bussin' with the Boys podcast.
Mm-hmm.
But man, those sounded different in tone than this that Castellanos is talking about.
He was hyping up his former guys.
Right. So if you are Clark Lee and Vanderbilt, you probably fine with that,
Sure.
Maybe it's a little too far. If you're Mike Norvell and FSU, this does nothing for you. What if they go out in week 1 and get blasted?
Yeah,
Bama.
Makes it even worse.
Like, people are going to talk about that even more.
And especially when you talk about the quarterback spot, because last year they brought in DJU, who, again, not great at Clemson, okay at Oregon State, but coming back last year into the ACC, did not play well at all, end up having to bench him towards the end of the season. This is your guy that's supposed to bring you back. And if he goes out there and gets knocked around and throws 3-4 interceptions and has a terrible game, then that confidence of him doing something this year is going to plummet immediately. And again, he doesn't have that. His biggest moment last year was beating Florida State in week number 1. They're Florida State's second game of the year when they were still technically a top 10 team that went on to lose 10 games last year. So he doesn't have that Pavia upsetting number 1 Alabama to be like, hey, look what I did. Like, it's not there.
Well, we talked yesterday about, in contrast, what would a Lenora Sellers say in this similar situation? And we actually quickly got an answer.
We do. From the Zach Gelb Show. Asked the exact same question. Here's what he said.
Shoot. Alabama's still Alabama to me. They were good last year. They're a good team. They're big, strong, and fast. That's how I remember watching them growing up. And I don't really think they've changed that much. Obviously, they got new coaching staff and all that, but that's still SEC ball. That's still Alabama. So
there was a big thing today. Thomas Costa.
Can't put that one on the bulletin board.
No. That was the most Lenoris answer.
Typical.
Oh, shoot.
Yeah.
Alabama's still Alabama to me.
He's like, I don't see that, you know?
Yeah, he was, I mean, he played him last year.
Yeah, and played him well. Close game.
This other dude didn't.
No.
So, I mean, I don't know. We'll see. Maybe he'll get the last laugh.
Well, has Castellanos ever? Okay, they played at Missouri last year, so he has played an SEC team, but
kinda.
There's a difference between Missouri and Alabama.
Yeah, I mean, and we all, I mean, like you said, Wes, most Lenoris thing ever. So contrast, you know, how Shane Beamer's looking at his quarterback comments on that situation versus, you know, how Mike Norvell's looking at his quarterback's comments. And I think Lenoris's answer, even if he wasn't responding to something dumb somebody else said, it would have been the same. You know, it really would have. And I mean, that's just exactly what you expect from him. And we're at, like, did Bama have a phenomenal year last year? No. Last I checked, we were still going into the college football playoff rankings selection show wondering if they were going to get in. That's not that bad. And
they won 3/4 of their regular season games.
And I know Nick Saban isn't on the sidelines. He's now just, you know, got a statue out there in the field named after him. Kalen DeBoer, not exactly a slouch of a coach, you know? Like, he took Washington to the playoff. He has won, like, 80-something% of his games as a college football coach. Like, he's pretty good, too.
Well, that's a good point there, man, because they – not only were they waiting to find out, they ended up being the last team out.
Yeah.
Essentially.
Literally.
So, I mean, we'll see. I get thinking they've taken a step back. Maybe they have in a lot of ways. But also, I mean, I feel like nobody will give Bama the benefit of the doubt because we're all ready to bury them, like just because you're tired of hearing about them for the last decade and a half. But there is something to be said for when a new staff comes in and is trying to do things differently, even for a program as just traditionally good as they've always been, and even as much talent as they have and will have for the foreseeable future. It's still an adjustment, man. You're doing different technology, different structure and how you practice, different strength and conditioning, different everything, frankly. So that no matter how good you were before, there is a transition period.
By the way, you guys want to take a guess at what Norvell's buyout this year is?
Is it like $400,000 now? Like, did they find a way to
still
the opposite of that?
It's still a lot.
It's still a lot.
I don't know.
I thought he might have
$40 million.
About $63 million. So even if they have a bad season, it's not exactly a cut and dry, well, we'll just fire the guy. It's not exactly an easy thing to do, especially in today's world of college sports where every penny counts.
That's tough.
Yeah. So
I mean, if you look through their schedule, they have a chance to have a better. I certainly didn't see 2-10 coming last year. I'll say that. They got a chance, but man, they still have some difficult games on that schedule, and it gets started in week 1 with that Bama game we just finished talking about.
Yeah, so we'll see what happens. Again, that game coming up in 66 days on Saturday night out there in Tallahassee. We'll come back, wrap up the hour. Gamecock baseball legend calling it a career. That's next. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs here on the game.
All right, everyone. If you are a guy and you're listening to this program, check out our friends over at Game Day Men's Health. They can help you, as a guy, reclaim your vitality. One of the ways that they do that is by helping to optimize your hormone levels. So if you want to go get checked out, you don't have to guess. You don't have to use an out-of-town company. You don't have to use somewhere that doesn't have comfortable man cave-style clinics and in-house labs. You can use the folks at Game Day Men's Health. They're conveniently located right in Northeast Columbia near I-77 and Two Notch Road. That's 115 Atrium Way. Also, check out their website, GameDayMen'sHealth.com. Put in Columbia or your zip code, and you'll find it there. 803-265-3161. Again, in-house labs. You can get results in about 15 minutes or less. Got drinks, snacks, man cave-style clinics committed to your success with expert guidance and follow-ups. They can take care of optimizing your vitality. GameDayMen'sHealth.com or 803-265-3161.
Two balls, no strikes to Merrifield.
Well, the last time through this part of the lineup, Klein did strike out Merrifield and Bradley Jr.
Line drive right field, base hit. South Carolina wins the College World Series.
Welcome back in. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler West and Chris wrapping up the hour on your Wednesday. That call back in the summer of 2010, Whit Merrifield driving in the winning run to claim the College World Series title for South Carolina. Obviously a pivotal moment in the history of South Carolina athletics, and obviously one that helps people remember Whit Merrifield very well for his time here. Obviously went on to have a successful career at the next level in Major League Baseball as well, and as of yesterday has officially announced his retirement.
My favorite thing about that call, and actually made it perfect to be played on the radio too, is you got the perfect ping off the bat. You know what I'm saying? Like that, just college baseball sound. You know, sometimes it can be a doink, or just it doesn't always have that like perfect sound.
Yeah,
that one did.
Yeah, I loved Whit's, and by the way, Whit went on to, you kind of maybe lose sight of that. Like, he didn't just make it to the majors and kind of like hang around. Like, he was an impact dude. You know, when he played with the Blue Jays, he made the All-Star team 3 times, 2019, 21, 23, not that long ago, obviously. Did some great things. I loved his retirement letter on social media, because this is a guy that, you know, I think in theory could have more to give to the game. Like, he could probably still go play at a high level, and had a daughter last year and just wants to spend more time, and got to finish out his career with the Braves, who he grew up rooting for. And kind of a funny moment, thanked Philly, said, "Sorry I stunk for you," because that was one of his stops where he didn't do so well. So, yeah, I mean, all the best to him. That was awesome. Obviously, part of probably the most iconic moment in South Carolina baseball history, and then went on to great things in the pros too.
Bill sent me the clip of him kind of reliving that moment, and he says, you know, admittedly, that was probably a terrible pitch to swing at a 2-0, but I just kind of had the like, well, here's the moment, take the opportunity, and obviously ended up working out, and you know, we'll live on in Gamecock history. And again, I don't know if he plans to come back around here, because obviously from the area, but somebody that is not going to have to pay for too many meals around here in town. That's to say the least.
You know, you asked us earlier, what is our most memorable moment for CMB? The thing about his career, Whit's career, is that you will never have to ask that question.
Yeah.
Like, it is, there are very, you know, there are moments that are remembered throughout somebody's career, but to have one just completely etched in stone the way that one is for him and for everybody who's a Gamecock baseball fan is, you know, it's special. Few guys that put on the uniform ever have, you know, that opportunity to be able to say that.
Yeah, no, it's legitimately the best single moment you could have in all of college baseball. Biggest stage, everything on the line, extra innings, no less, you know, to win the College World Series. Like, that can't be topped. Like, it's literally the best moment you could possibly have in this sport.
Yeah, I mean, and then to go on and do what he did in the pros, again, I mean, I said it earlier, but not just like, you know, you're not just tracking, oh, what's Whit Merrifield up to? Like, he's in the minors doing some good things, like getting to the highest level, playing at a very high level and sustaining it, becoming an all-star. Great success story that South Carolina can point to. And I think it reiterates the point, too, guys, that we talk about a lot. Remember how Ray Tanner would, we're just some guys out here scrapping. Like, that team was loaded with talent. You know, Walker, JBJ, Merrifield, like some guys that went on to the pros and did some great things. And, yeah, there were some guys that didn't go on to play pro baseball, but Whit was one of them, and congrats to him.
Almost a decade in the majors, 280 batting average, 94 home runs, 485 RBIs, 3-time All-Star, 3-time American League stolen base leader as well. Quite a career for Whit Merrifield, and wish him the best of luck in retirement as well. I'll do it for the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Coming up next, halftime show, myself and Terry Ford on your Wednesday on the Game.
All right, y'all, as we close out the show today, let's take a minute to tell you about one of our great partners here on the program. That's Integrated Media. Michael, Nathan, their team do an amazing job and have for years all around the Midlands, homes and businesses